Serious, drug dealers of Reddit, have you ever called CPS on a client? If so, what's the story? U/MalibuCat responded. Thank you to everyone who stood up for the children. I want to share my story, being on the opposite side of U/ManyB's question. I was a user whose dealer called CPS on them. Many years ago, me and my partner were addicted to opiates. We had a steady dealer for a while, and eventually my partner was able to start selling after finding a new source. Well, our old dealer didn't like losing business, so he hit us where it would hurt the most, our child. He had called and made up some bogus claims. When the police came, it was just me and the child, and the place was clean and had food. I got them to leave, but CPS showed up a couple hours later. The truth is, we were full-on functioning addicts who wanted freedom, but didn't know where to seek it. We followed the requests of CPS and the drug court exactly how they asked, and with no setbacks. Both have completed 3 months of residential and 3 months of outpatient treatment and were back home with our child in time for the holidays. We have been sober since 2012. The reason I want to share this is to give thanks for those of you who have had to make that call. Not only did my child get a chance at a good life, our whole family did. U/Convict responded. Former dealer here. It's been many years now, but I sold crack, heroin, pills, cocaine as a teenager. I once had a lady come in the trap house with a newborn. She was literally selling herself and/or her baby for a few rocks. When I saw the newborn in shitty diapers and dirty as fuck, I knew I had to give her a few rocks. I let her smoke and leave. I also called BCW Bureau of Children's Welfare on her as soon as she walked out. She lived on my street. I couldn't let her try to sell her baby. I couldn't let her keep it either. I just couldn't call the police. The baby was in a foster home less than a week later. The lady disappeared shortly after. I never saw her again. I hope she never got the baby back. She was a real piece of shit. U/Deleted responded. This was a long time ago, and I've since gotten clean and started my own family. But there was a girl I knew who was homeless with her newborn son. On Easter weekend, I was walking on this trail to go meet with some people to sell them a sack. It started raining, and that, of course, made me mad. There's these bridges that cross over the top of the trail, and lots of kids gather and smoke or get spun under the bridges. And that's where I found her. She was passed out drunk with some random guy under the bridge while her newborn baby sat strapped in his car seat in the rain. He wasn't under the bridge. He was crying. And he looked dirty. I didn't have any children at this point, but panicked seeing the little guy. I grabbed him, dropped all the shit I was supposed to be selling, and walked off the trail and up the couple blocks to the police station. I told them what happened and where LD found him. CPS took him and he ended up getting adopted. Edit. Wow guys, thanks for the awards. Y'all are amazing. I like to believe I was just the first one to come across that scene. I want to think that nobody would leave an infant in the rain, clearly being ignored, neglected by his obviously incapacitated mother caretakers. U/Divebar Princess responded. When I was selling to her, a lady shook her crying baby in front of me. I wigged out, took the baby, dumped tilde 500 worth of cocaine and heroin, and called 911 from my car. She didn't put up a fight until the cops came to arrest her. She tried to sue me for kidnapping. Definitely not the best strategy for me. I was 18 and addicted pretty bad, but when the baby saw a doctor under state care, he was covered in bruises, a couple of burns, and had 2 broken ribs already. I'm convinced she would have killed him. He's 10 now and happy and thriving. The whole experience, and legal battle when she tried to have me charged with kidnapping, is how I got sober. U/BigCockangle 42069 responded. My time has come. I was around 15 to 16 in high school selling mostly acid and ecstasy. I was doing it to save up money for a car and in the future, college. There was this one girl I would never sell to because she was pregnant. She was one of those girls that got pregnant with an older dude and he left the picture. She didn't want the baby, but her parents made her keep it. Finally, not long after she gave birth, she was trying to buy some ecstasy. She was in my car and I was giving her, I think, around 2 or 3 pills. That's around $40 to $55, and she says, I'm going to be honest, I don't have money, but I know you have a girlfriend you really love, so I was thinking about giving you my baby. Didn't say anything for a little. I couldn't tell if she was serious. Then after a long pause, I told her to get out of my car. Later in the day, I had my parents call CPS for obvious reasons. I came up with a story that me and the girl were friends and that she was telling me how she would trade the baby for drugs. I'm not sure, but I think the baby ended up going with a family member and is living a completely normal life. U/Impractical Molecule responded. I was selling a variety of drugs a few years ago. I had one friend. Let's call him Chris. He stayed at his head uncle's house with his uncle, His name's Rick. Fuck him, I'll use his real name, his cousin, and his cousin's kids, around 4 to 6. I hated going to this house because all they did was cook meth inside. Literally feet away from these children. These kids lacked clothes, they barely ate. I'm pretty sure they were never enrolled in school either. Well, eventually I get fed up and decide to make a call to CPS. They go in and what they found was horrifying. The Uncle Rick had a hard drive with thousands of naked photos of the children. They also found out he was prostituting the kids for meth and heroin. When I found this out, I was absolutely appalled. He's in jail and honestly I hope he doesn't make it. You/deleted responded. Yes, back when I was younger, maybe 17L, got my first job at Domino's Pizza. One of my managers was a really scummy 24-year-old guy that looked like a troll, had astoundingly bad hygiene and also a shitty attitude, but sold good weed and bought me cigarettes. This was my first experience having older friends able to get me good stuff on demand like that. One day he hooked me up with a friend of his that was selling mushrooms, so I met with that guy and bought an ounce, and then walked to my manager's house to sell him some and also get some weed. So turns out him and his similarly aged sister, who has a 1-year-old baby, both live in makeshift bedsheet bedrooms in the basement of the tiny house. They smoked inside, windows closed. Cats everywhere, bugs everywhere, weird gross sour smells coming from all areas. Everything gross. Their mom was home but she was senile and addicted to painkillers, as well as the sister. So we did the trade downstairs, and when I go back upstairs I go to the kitchen to throw some stuff away and I see the baby in a high chair, eating a pack of cigarettes. He's just sitting there tearing them open and putting in his mouth and spitting it out. I ran downstairs and told the sister and she just started yelling, "Mom, Mom, get the baby," a couple times lazily, then gives up and goes back to just sitting there. It was surreal. I had never experienced such neglect and disgust from people. I left and waited 2 days to call CPS because I didn't want my manager to know it was me who called. I know the kids got taken away and she went to live with a different family member, or at least that's what I was told. You/Uberjudge responded. Twice. Left anonymous tips, which I know are hard to follow up for such a strained child protection agency, but as a pot dealer it was all I felt I could do. I found out later one of the kids was put into foster care, adopted by the foster parents, and recently graduated a trade school. I have no idea about the other kids, siblings. But I hope they made it too. Kids should be protected. Humans only get one childhood. Let's let kids enjoy it, and grow to happy adults. Don't hurt them intentionally or by your own stupidity *****. That also means washing your hands, people. Edit 1. Thanks for all the kind words, guys. A guy in the comments pointed out something that everyone should know. If you need to report to CPS, you flood them with details. Lots of details. It's the only way they can act. A one-sentence tip won't cut it. You/Acadia responded. Real short and simple. Yes. A friend of my girlfriend introduced us to her neighbors who were like 50 to 60-year-old hippies that looked like a bad acid trip but bought weed regularly for full price. Couple months down the road they start being more friendly with my girlfriend and I and start talking more when we'd go drop off the shit. The topic began with her telling us how she has custody of her daughter's oldest born because her daughter was sitting time at a women's prison. Backstory on the kid: looks 15 but clearly has the mind capacity of a 6 or 7-year-old. Not sure what was wrong with her specifically, but you could tell there were issues. Near the end of the conversation about her daughter, she brought up the fact that her granddaughter was prescribed Adderall 30XR, and whenever they got her prescription they'd dump all the little beads into a bowl to use whenever they couldn't find meth or whatever they needed, and instead fill the Adderall with Benadryl to make the kid sleep. Till this day I'll never forget the emotions I felt after getting out of there and sitting in my car. My hands were shaking so bad it was hard to Google information about CPS, much less type information in. I felt goosebumps in every pore of my scalp. As a father of 2, I never knew such evil existed. Obviously in movies and shit, but never experienced something firsthand like that. You/Saucerburrito7 responded. Back in college I went over to a single mother's house to drop off some bud. The kid was 3 years old. I walk in and notice it is extremely smoky, and I immediately have a hard time breathing. It smelled like rotten shit, trash, and cigarettes. I was there for about 3 minutes and went to use the bathroom, where I noticed fresh and dried blood on the toilet and shit smeared all over the floors and up the walls. The shit was old and hardened, and dead bugs were in the corners of the bathroom and piled on top of the feces. But that isn't the only icing on the cake. Once I left the bathroom, I went back out to the living room area and saw a big-ass rat run right across the floor. Looked like he came right out of Ratatouille. Then the mother asked me if I wanted to take opioids, so I got the fuck out of the house and called CPS. U/dawn_of_the_dead7 responded. I pulled up to this woman's house. I was 19 at the time. She was a regular and often asked if I had any coke. I was strictly a marijuana dealer. When I walked into her house, she had 2 babies, twins. Female dealer here. When I asked to use the bathroom, she said she didn't have running water due to money issues. There was a 5-gallon bucket in the bathroom to pee and poop in. This bucket was extremely full. Not to mention the overflowing trash cans and tied-off trash bags in the living room. I couldn't believe how gross her house was. I panicked. I called CPS and told them I was a family friend. I drove my car down the road a little and waited for the cops to show up. I watched them pull the woman out to the house in cuffs. She turned out to have heroin in her house. I still wonder about those twins today. U/deleted responded. So, I'm only posting because I have been clean and sober for 3.5 years now, and anything I say I have already been convicted for, and I've officially finished all of my legal issues. I have never officially called Child and Family Services, but I had this one mother who used to constantly call me for meth. And I had never been to her house before. I was a bit of a sketchbag and didn't trust anybody, but after a few months I built a relationship with her where I felt at ease going to her house. When I went to go drop some off, it was child tax day. I never knew she was a mother, normally not an issue for me. I could not care less. I walked into the house and the smell was unbelievable. Cigarettes, sweat, shit and piss. There was broken glass on the floor. 12-inch burn circles on the floor, poop on the floors. The TV was smashed. The bathroom door was literally torn off and in the hallway. I had seen a little toddler that was walking around with no diaper on. He had his own poop all over him. He was so malnourished he was grey. The mother came to give me her money and I took the bag of meth, I had put it in my pocket, and I told her to buy some diapers for her kid. I told her that she would have to find her dope somewhere else, and walked away. A good friend of mine who had always tried to help me out was a social worker. And I told her who she was and where she lived, and gave her some details so she could make a final decision. I'll always remember that kid. The last I heard he had been taken away, and the mother was in jail. U/Kickle responded. I went to this disabled woman's house to bring the goods. It had been a while since I had seen her. I think her son was 13 the last time I had been there and now he was 15. I asked her how he was doing. She began telling me he had been giving her a lot of trouble and I couldn't imagine that cause he was such a good kid. I wish I could explain the no big deal tone she had when she told me this. Kid's name, said he has had enough and that he was going to kill himself. He went to the bathroom and got a razor blade and cut his bicep down to the bone. I begged him to let me take him to the ER but he wouldn't, ungrateful shit. I know she saw the look of horror on my face. I told her I wanted to go say and went to talk with him. He told me she had a new boyfriend and all they do is drink, shoot up, and fight. He said he wanted to live with his dad but he had a new family. I told him about telling someone at school about it and he didn't want his mom to be in trouble. As an adult, my dad had put me on 72-hour holds in the crazy house several times. I told him how a 72-hour hold could give him time to think about what to do next, have 3 meals a day, and someone to talk to. I know that's not great advice, but I was still using at the time and wasn't my best self. The good intention was there though. I ended up getting in a fight with her before I left. My son was a little younger than hers and I couldn't imagine telling that story the way she did. I waited a week and called CPS, hoping she wouldn't know it was me. She did. Nothing ever came of it and I still think about that boy all the time. U/deleted responded. Yes. Like 6 years ago, I sold meth one time for like a month. Sold to a coworker who had 2 kids, but only had custody of one. I went to her apartment and it was a mess. Trash everywhere, meth pipes just laying around on her living room table, which was covered in cigarette butts and empty baggies. Her kid was just walking around the living room, not even wearing a diaper. Apartment smelled like cigarettes, weed, and piss. She wanted to buy $1,000 worth of dope from me, but only had $500 cash, so she ended up adding a brand new 55-inch HD TV and wall mount, after she used rubbing alcohol to rub off the name and address of the rent-to-own place she had just got the TV from a few days before. After leaving I told my then pregnant wife about it and she called CPS. She lost custody of her kid, and her sister who was actually the nurse we saw at all our baby appointments got custody of him. She also has custody of her other child as well. Last I heard she went to jail for trying to run her boyfriend off the highway. My wife is Facebook friends with her sister who constantly posts pictures of the kids, who look happy. U/Herald MT Addict responded. have used, sold, and middleman Xanax, weed and blow for a long time when money is tight. The only time I've called CPS was when this chick who was a regular for blow asked me to deliver a ball, 3.5G, to her house. I walk in, kid is asking for food. I think nothing of it. 4 hours later she calls me asking for a front on a gram. I go back to do it, kid is ornery and still asking for food. 6 to 7 years old. 3 hours later at 8 AM she calls me asking for another front on a gram. I go back to do it, she always paid eventually, and kid is worse off, still hungry, and now crying. At that point I refuse the front, go home, and call CPS. I want my profit, but not when I can tell you're ruining your life. If I see people getting out of hand, asking for fronts, neglecting kids' bills etc., I tell them I'm dry or I drop contact entirely. I'm doing what I need to provide for me and my own, not trying to ruin someone else's life. You/Chocolate Pro responded. My brother-in-law's dealer recently pulled out of the game. He was dropping off some painkillers, weed, acid, shrooms or something like that, and the woman who was buying offered her 3 children as payment instead. Not one, all 3. He told my BIL, my husband, and I that they couldn't be over 10. This guy tore her a new one and called the cops. He's not her only dealer and it fucked with him to know that someone else could have taken her up on the offer. He's been chilling for now, trying to keep to himself after that. He's been smoking his weed stash and slowly liquidating everything else. He only sold mild drugs and weed, and this woman was willingly selling her kids to get her fix. Not sure how he's not in trouble for dealing to her, but he claims he had only weed on his person when it went down. Edit, we live in a state where weed is legal, so finding it on your person won't get you in trouble. You/deleted responded. This was over 20 years ago, but yeah. I was selling pot, sometimes a few other things, but I was pretty minor. Messed around with a girl who I had just started buying from me. Went to sleep and the next morning, around 10, I get up to this completely naked little 3 years old running around. Okay fine, she's a kid, but you'd imagine a diaper would get on her ass by 10:30, right? Nah. I left at 1 with the naked baby running all over the house. The mom and her BF in the living room passed out on what I now know was heroin and wouldn't move at all. Girl I had hung out with thought the whole thing was normal. I couldn't shake it. It's not like she was just naked, that's not a huge deal, it's that she was filthy. Nobody was taking care of her other than to make sure she had food. I guess maybe she was potty trained already. It's not like the house was filled with lakes of piss. Called and reported it to CPS the same day. She called me a day or 2 later telling me she was pregnant and needed to come stay with me. That's not how that shit works. Never heard from her again. I hope that many had a good life. You/New World Writer responded. Probably about a decade ago now I used to sell weed to this one couple in town. They seemed like decent enough people until I found out woman was pregnant and still getting high, not even just on weed but doing psychedelics and pills. I stopped fucking with them for a long time and one day get a call. She just had the baby and said she was having a party to celebrate. She was going to have acid, shrooms, weed, and alcohol. I was like, you got a babysitter? To which she said, nah, we're just gonna leave her in the room. There was going to be like 40 people all fucked up and tripping while she just locked her newborn in the room. Needless to say, I'm like mentally fucking screaming at this point, but keep my composure. I'm like, you already got everything? No, I was gonna see if I could have you front me some weed. I already got everything else. Bet. What time? She tells me the time and I hang up. Told my wife about it and asked her what to do cause that's fucked. We called size and told them what time the party was supposed to be and what their plan was. Turned out by the time they got there the couple was already passed out. There was way more people and hard drugs as well. People were nodded out in the baby's room. Last I heard the couple lost the baby and never got it back. They are both pretty hard on heroin, which I think they started fucking with during the time I stopped coming around while she was still pregnant. You/Buclau666 responded. Why a man selling shit makes you like reassess your life and character sometimes. Moved coke for a bit. Money is wicked, but then you realize who is doing it. Your homies that are parents or are married or both, and you realize all the problems you hear about with them ended up being related to the shit you have been selling. Girls you thought wheat solid will ditch their man and blow you for a line. It's bad enough that she would do that to a random, but they will do that knowing that her man is your good friend. It's so fucked up. One time I did have to call CPS on a friend. He called me for blow. He was at his new girlfriend's place. I had never met her. I get there and the house is overflowing from smoke and he tells me to come in. As I'm walking in I'm like, damn bro, WTF is all this smoke from? He says smokes, bit of green. and crack and meth, so I obviously was like, yo WTF, cause now I am breathing this shit, and as I'm telling him to fuck off and that I am not gonna chill and breath this, I hear a baby crying and lose it. Left immediately and called CPS. My buddy took off, she got arrested. I don't talk to him anymore. Somehow they thought that shit was okay. Ended up cutting off a lot of people when I stopped chopping blow. Those people, no matter how chill or good or cool they ne're normally, that shit will change the fuck out of them when they run out and want more. U/Venus Valkyrie JH responded. I am kind of sitting on a situation myself. My sister-in-law lives with my mother-in-law and my 2 nephews. The nephew's mom is a paranoid schizophrenic and she lives on the streets BC. She trusts no one and the kid's dad doesn't want them. So my sister-in-law raises them. My mother-in-law is like 74 and is going through chemo and radiation. So, the sis-in-law has like 12 cats. Maybe more. And they have a few dogs. When I went into the house recently with my husband, I almost fainted from the smell. The ammonia was overwhelming. There was cat feces and puddles of piss all over the house, even in the kids' room. I grabbed the kids and took them to our house. Their overnight bag had a layer of cat piss that was like gel. I had to make them strip and wash their clothes and bag 3 times to get the smell out. Now, I can't keep them forever. I have 3 kids of my own and my oldest has autism. We have only 3 bedrooms. So I want to call PS, we are in Texas, but I don't want to cause any type of issues with the family. So, I don't know what to do. I thought to report anonymously. I know that living in a cloud of cat piss and piles of feces isn't good for you. Anyhow, thought I would share my story. I wasn't dealing anything but, nonetheless. It was awful and I'm thinking of calling CPS, but I would have to know we are anonymous. U/Millwall Wolfie responded. In Britain we have social services. Now we're talking the mid-90s during the rave scene. I was a doorman working some really dodgy clubs, you proper dens of cunts, and every now and then would catch a twat that weren't supposed to be dealing and confiscated their pills and cash. My boss got the dough but we split the ease. So I get told to go down the sticks to look after this warehouse rave, not so much stopping the punters knocking fuck out of each other but stop a chance robbing the door money. 20 quid on the door, about 2,500 people in off their tits. Shit, I was tempted to do the place myself. Anyway, while I was there this bird came up to us and asked us, the bouncers, to watch her car. We thought nothing of it until about 3 in the morning when me mate spots a little kid staring out the window. This fucking pill-head useless cunt had gone raving with her kids. Needless to say, we took the kids into the warm, made sure they were fed and watered and called the bill. Obviously the social services got involved from that. The rave finished at noon Sunday and my shift ended at 5 AM, so I couldn't tell you what happened, but I hope those kids went to someone that actually gives a shit. U/Mrs. O'Murder responded. Slightly different. My bio dad was the drug dealer, bio mom the client. I believe they were together for a short while, not sure what happened there, but by the time I was 2, bio mom was with someone else, and bio dad wasn't exactly in the picture. She had abandoned me numerous times during those 2 years, a total of about 7.5 months. During the time she had me, still on drugs, and new boyfriend was abusive towards her, unsure of towards me, but they were sure LD at least witnessed. I don't know what the motivating factor was, but one night bio dad called CPS, and I was taken away immediately and placed with a foster family. I got tested, no emotional attachments to either parents, and they later denied bio mom rights to contact me till L turned 18. Original foster family later adopted me. As far as I know, he's still a drug dealer and in and out of jail, and she's turned her life around and is doing good. U/necrophiliac native responded. At a friend's house, at the time, and they offered me their daughter for a few 80s. She might have been 13. Dishes piled everywhere, smelled like cat piss and dog shit, animals everywhere. Downstairs bathroom was used by 2 fucking ferrets who just shit all over the floor. Fly strips on the ceiling just caked, I'm serious. Left, went back home, asked her father, who I knew before this, what I should do. We both ended up leaving tips with CPS, and as far as I know the kid is gone, and not soon after the house burnt down on accident, only the second home to do so in like 7 years. I have no idea where the parents are, out of state somewhere, I'm thinking Ohio, and I'm going to school here in 2 weeks. Drugs are bad, okay. Edit, because my girlfriend absolutely flipped the fuck out on me because of this post, I should state, if it already wasn't fucking inferred, that I didn't sleep with her. That's disgusting. U/Princess Boopy responded. I made a play one day and this woman and her husband were meeting me. I pulled up to the spot and they were out of their vehicle yelling. They pointed at my car and I just drove around the store. Why no F that? The woman and one child came to my car after going around the building, so I let them in and drove off. Well, people had already been calling the cops and the husband called and reported the daughter missing. Crazy shit for like a 5-minute period. So I took them 10 minutes from said pharmacy to their house, and the whole time the mom was shut talking the dad and the daughter was just sitting there wide-eyed but calm. I can still remember her face, her parents just fighting and acting belligerent. Although I only sold weed, the parents were apparently on meth, one found out later. I decided after the ladies were home to call 911 and report an endangered child. I didn't call CPS per se, but I did call police who were happy to locate the daughter, and eventually she was taken to a family who were not drug addicted. I'll never forget that girl's face and name. I hope she's okay today. U/D242 responded. As a kid who ended up in foster care multiple times because of drug-using parents, my father eventually cleaned up his act and got myself and my sister back. I just want to say thank you to anyone who has gotten a child out of these situations. The conditions some you guys describe are all too real for me, and until high school I never really looked at them as abnormal, really just kind of shitty. I still sometimes mention how I used to bring home crack pipes and condom wrappers as a kid, and it takes me a second to realize why people are looking at me a little weird. To any drug dealers, please stop selling hard drugs to adults with children. I get it, money is money, been there done that, might go back for a bit cause of this corona thing tbh. But just think for a second what nearly irreparable emotional and physical damage will come from letting those parents go back home with their kids. Age 5. My little sister melted a plastic straw on the stove and dropped it on my foot, causing a pretty big blister that I still have a scar from today. Where were my parents? Father was at work and my mother was cracked out on the couch, not hearing me crying for 3 hours until my dad came home. Need another example? How about my dad pulling up next to my mother at a red light, giving a dude a BJ for a rock with me and my sister in the backseat and the floor covered in dirty diapers? I'm actually getting a little mad now, so we'll stop there, but please just think about the kids for a minute. U/JJ the artist responded. So, I sold weed and pills at 13 and would deliver around my town and the neighboring town. I had to go to the neighboring town and drop off an 1/8 and 40 Xanax, which would cost them roughly $350. Which isn't a bad price for the best weed in a 100-mile radius. So I'm biking to the address, which took an hour. So I went to the back door and knocked 4 times. He opened the door while beating his kid. I'm very against beating your kids, physical punishment is okay, but he didn't stop after me standing there for 15 minutes. So I charged him $700 for 20 Xanax and 3 grams. He bought it anyway. So I rode home and called CPS and gave them the address and some information about him having pills and weed in little translucent baggies. He's been in jail for a few years now. U/Ziriberry responded. When I was younger, I used to sell my neighbor sold meth, so we would hang out pretty often. When I actually went to her apartment, she had a baby and a cat with babies and fleas all over the place. I was pretty lost, doing all kinds of drugs, so I didn't call CPS on her. But one day she called me because she got caught stealing in a store with her baby. She asked me to pick up her baby. I was picking up meth and heroin, but picked up her baby and dropped her off at her mom's house, and did tell her to be careful and think about not giving her back. I know after that she stayed with my friend's mom and got into a custodial battle until my friend went to jail for 3 years. I am sober now and have my own family. Seems like a crazy dream that can come to reality at any time if I relapsed. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.